Are you ready to dive deeper into story than you've ever gone before? Prepare to be amazed at the power of your story. Welcome to an episode of Stories Unplugged, where we open up stories and look inside to see what makes them work and find the method underneath the magic. Welcome to the stage today's host, CSP, CPAE, and storytelling master, Kelly Swanson.
Welcome to an episode of Stories Unplugged, where we dive deep into a story and not just look at what makes it good, but what makes it work. Why story? Because there is a difference in telling people what to do and making them want to do it. There is a difference in manipulation and motivation. There is a difference in telling people everything you know and tapping into their pain and persuading them to take action on your solution. And the difference is story. Today in this session, we're going to have so much fun because we're going to showcase two stories from your peers. That's right. Not just any stories, but award-winning stories, because both of these speakers won state competitions in their NSA chapter, Utah Mountain West. And we asked if we could have that game film and study it and dissect it, not just to see what made it good, but what made it win and what made it work. There are three ways you can get the most value out of this session today. Number one, listen, learn, and when you watch their videos, like me, take out a piece of paper and a pen and take notes. Study. See what the techniques are underneath the magic. Number two, have your own story ready. Maybe it's a story that's finished, that's not finished, a story on stage, a story in your demo, or a brand story. And take everything you hear in this session and apply it to that one story and watch how it can be leveled up like you've never seen before. The third way you can get value out of this session is to go to that QR code up there at some point during the session. That link is a private group page for all attendees here. And I've put up there both of those videos so you can watch them again and study them later. I've also put an ebook I created just for you, Strategic Story Blueprint, 16 layers you can add to any story to level it up. There is also a chat thread, so if you have remaining questions, ahas, things you don't understand from here, or part two that is happening in the breakout session immediately following, where we're going to take more stories from the audience and make them over in real time, and you put your questions up in that chat thread, and I will commit to answering every one of them at some point in the next month. So buckle up, Buttercup, because we're going to move fast. AV team, would you please play the first video by Jody or Gil Brown?
My car was loaded with groceries as I prepared to pull out of the parking lot of the Macy's grocery store on 36th Street and Washington Boulevard, near downtown Ogden. I noticed across the parking lot a homeless man sitting on the corner in a wheelchair. But I had a million errands to run. And I had to stop myself and think, what is my own personal motto? Every interaction is an opportunity to change a life. But this parking lot in this part of town, it was not unusual to see homeless people there. And sadly, there are often too many faces to be able to assist all of those in need. But then a little voice in my head said, I should help this man. So immediately I started to scrounge around in my purse to see if I had any cash. Because you know what? I don't carry cash much these days. But I dug deep enough and sure enough found a $10 bill. So immediately I drove over, parked my car, and walked over to the sidewalk. As I was walking there, I noticed his leg was amputated at the knee. And he had on a baseball cap that covered up his scraggly, gray, white hair, mostly unkempt. He looked a little rough and haggard. But I walked up to him and pleasantly greeted him, and we carried on for a few minutes, exchanging basic pleasantries. After visiting for just a few minutes, I handed him the $10 bill, and he proceeded to thank me. And he said, you know what I'm going to do with this money? I'm going to go inside that Macy's, and I'm going to get some chicken strips. Because I have a friend who lives down the street. He just got out of the hospital. He had some surgery. Now I'm going to take him this meal so he can have a healthy meal to help him recover. I told him I thought that was a great use of the money and that I hoped he would sit down and enjoy the visit with his friend as they ate a meal together. I waved, said I would be on my way, and then I left. I went and got in my car and started driving across busy Washington Boulevard, where I parked at a bank parking lot, proceeding to run to my next errand. But as I stood in line at the bank, a little voice inside my head said, get some cash and go to the homeless man on the corner. I was a little bit confused because I thought to myself, been there, done that, check. But the voice said again, get some money and go to the homeless gentleman on the corner. Now, I did not know what kind of mission I was going on, but I decided to listen to the voice. So when I got up to the front of the line, I did my business, I finished all my transactions, and then I told the teller, could you grab me $100 from my checking account? And as she handed over the cash, I stuck it in my pocket. And then I obediently got back in my car and drove to the parking lot. Just 10 minutes after I'd left, I came back to the same spot. And as I walked to the sidewalk, the gentleman's eyes got wide as he saw me. You look surprised to see me. Probably about as surprised as I am to be here. I don't really know why I'm here. Except as I drove away, I couldn't get you out of my mind. I feel like there's someone who is thinking about you. Is there someone in heaven who could be thinking about you? And then this man started to break down. And he told me a story. I wasn't always like this, you know. I used to be a strong, tough man. Took care of my family. In fact, sometimes I think maybe I was too strong. Sometimes maybe I used my strength to get my way, even to the point of pushing people around. Then everything started to change. I had a stroke and got really sick. I even lost my leg because of it. And then things really went downhill. And it all happened in an instant. My house caught on fire. And worse than that, my dog was inside the house and wouldn't leave because my wife was trapped inside. Just like that. My house, my dog, and my wife of 40 years, all gone. By this time, his hands were shaking, and his tears turned into heaves and sobs. Do you know why my wife died in that fire? Do you know why she didn't leave that house? She had a brain tumor. She was hooked up to oxygen and to equipment that was keeping her alive. But all that fighting for her life didn't even matter because she was overcome by the smoke. She died in that fire. I stopped and took a deep breath. I took off my sunglasses, pulled my hair away, tucked it behind my ear so he could see my right side. And then I said, a few years ago, I had a brain tumor. I had 3 surgeries and spent 35 days in the hospital. I had a brain infection, a spinal fluid leak, facial paralysis, and I lost my hearing. And I almost lost my life. I truly believe your wife sent me here today. She is thinking about you right now. She wants you to know she loves you so much. He broke down, sobs, heaving, and his head fell into his hands. And then I remembered the money in my pocket, and I grabbed out the $100 bill. I took one of his hands away from his face, and I placed the bill in his hands. He looked down, and then he closed his fingers around mine. And in the moment, I said, your wife loves you, and God loves you. He sees you. No matter how you feel, you are not alone. And the tears just poured from his eyes. And then he lifted my fingers and gently kissed the top of my hand. I wasn't always like this, but you reminded me who I really am. Thank you. You really are beautiful. And then I embraced him, and we held each other for several long seconds. And just like that, the moment was over. And I started to walk away. I turned back and said, God bless you, my friend. And he turned and waved and returned the smile. When I got in my car, I realized I didn't even know his name, but I knew his soul, and that was enough. There is no way I could have known that his wife had a brain tumor, but there is someone who does know, and I will be forever grateful that I listened to the voice. Thank you.
For those of you who say you can't impact people with storytelling on a video, you're wrong. Now, please welcome to the stage the award-winning storyteller herself to receive the applause she deserves. Welcome, Jody Orgill Brown. made me cry. You make me want to sing while humming with my mouth shut. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
I took a million notes, as I bet you did too. So much we can see that's good and rich and beautiful in that. And I want to try to even go deeper beyond the surface notes that I took and go underneath and point out layers that I see in your story that we can learn from. When I look at a story, I look at, is it compelling? Is it persuasive? And is it easily digestible and repeatable beyond the bells and whistles like characters and whatnot? I want to point out, Jody, just 4, and all the talking points, by the way, today, or most of them, will be in your portal online. The first thing I noticed was that it was conversational. I felt like that was you. I connected with you. I felt like it was the same Jody up there that I would see, at lunch.
The good thing is there's really only one Jody, and she shows up all the time the same way. So that helps.
Yes, and it makes me like you, trust you, believe you, and know you. And that is critical for connection. Just as it is in sales, same thing up here. If I don't feel like I know you, I'm not following you on this journey. Thank you for doing that. Was it hard for you, or did you have to learn how to be conversational, or just kind of comes naturally?
It comes somewhat naturally, however, you do have to practice. And I think playing the part of the narrator as well as the characters allows you to be conversational and lead the story in a way that you want it to, so that wherever you want to take the audience, you can just naturally lead them there so they can go along the journey with you.
Yes, beautiful. So how do you do that with your story? When you write your story, think about writing it the way you talk, not as if it's meant to be read. Don't use those eyes. Write it as if it's meant to be told. When I write a story, I practice it as I tell it. Because authenticity is the new polished. The second thing I learned from your story, the layer I see, is it was experiential. And what do I mean by that? You took me to a specific experience that you had. And why is that so important? I mean, it had a beginning, it had a middle, it had an end. It was a defined moment. You might be like, duh. But a lot of people in their stories, especially when I go into businesses, they give me a list of facts. That's not a story. A story is about an experience, about somebody who goes through something. They have a conflict, they have a resolution, they have a victory moment on the other side. And I appreciated that it was an experience. I also saw a layer of emotion. It had the feels, right? And that is, you might think, why does that matter? Because that's going to get in a deeper level for me. I'm going to connect. It's going to have a more lasting. You're opening up different parts of my brain. Was it hard for you to be an emotional speaker? Was that hard? Did you have to learn? Did it feel weird, or does it always come naturally to you? Because for some of us, it can be kind of hard.
My own personal survival story has come with a lot of deep and difficult emotion. And early on, I realized in order to help people understand the principles and the power behind the messages I wanted to teach, I had to go there. I had to go deep. And the deeper I went, the more I realized that people connected with the story, and then they could actually feel it and implement it with the teaching principles that I had. And so I think some people have a hard time. It's fun to have positive emotion and to be dancing and jumping on stage, but it's a little more difficult to be vulnerable and raw, and yet that's where the real power comes. And I realized if I just embraced that vulnerability and authenticity, that it could become a superpower.
And we felt it. You illustrated it beautifully. How do you do that yourself? Well, it can be very practical, actually. First of all, don't tell a story you're not through bleeding from and have found the gift in it. You don't have to be over it, but be able to be on the other side of it to some degree. Make sure your story has emotion in its structure. Stories are not just about conflict resolution, victory moment. They're about the emotion that is attached to it. Don't just tell me what happened to the character in your story. Tell me how it made them feel. How did it make them feel to have this problem? How did it make them feel to get this solution? How did it make them feel to live into a new normal? How did it make you feel to be part of that process? Emotions are critical when it comes to persuasion, and they should be included in your story as well. Last thing I want to point out, though there are many, Jody, and is that I walked away from your story and I knew exactly what to do with it. I knew the point. The point was, be kind, listen to that voice, right?
Yes, that was the point. And by putting it throughout and weaving it just like you would foreshadow in a book, then you're helping them understand the point all the way through. And then they get to the end and they realize, oh yeah, that was the point from the beginning.
Yes, bingo. And you might go, duh, I can't tell you how many stories I hear out there in the business world, and you walk away going, what exactly was the point of that? We've got to know what the point is. Before you write that story, before you craft it, think about it. What do you want them to think, feel, or do as a result of hearing this story? Why are you telling them this story? It's not for you, it is for them. What's the lesson? What's the point? What's the point? And you may know what it is, but it's not been clearly verbalized in your story. Beautiful job, well done. And with a story like that, I ask myself, because I look at stories like a tool. Are there other things we could add to it that would achieve other purposes? And I thought to myself, what are some of the other layers we could possibly add to that story? And I thought, okay, what if we added a layer of transformation in Jody? What if we added I was going through something, and this is how this story changed me, this moment, as a result? I thought, wait a minute, what if she's going to speak to leadership and we could put a strong lead-in statement in the beginning and tap into leadership and their issue and make the story connect to that particular audience? Could we do that? And then I thought, what if we give them an actual, go do this with this story statement? Now, I know what y'all are thinking. You're like, Kelly, we've told you we don't have that much time to do everything you tell us to do in a story. That story's already 10 minutes long. We add to it, it's going to be 15 minutes. We don't have 15 minutes to afford in a keynote. Agreed. And you may not even have 10. But you can still add many, many, many layers to the story and do it with few words. So I decided to play and prove it. So I took her words, shuffled them around. Please excuse me for the liberties that I took. They're just choices that we can make. And I decided to see what would happen as a result. And AV team, what if we had a little bit of music? When it comes to leadership, our highest impact is not found in those big stage moments, but rather the small ones we never saw coming. I was reminded of this a few years ago when I was rushing around my city, checking off all these items on this long list of things to do, and I was also in a funk. Business was down, and I was starting to feel like I had been left behind. Like I had lost sight of my purpose. It was on Ogden Street, somewhere on my list between drop off the dry cleaners and pick up the chicken, when I rushed past this man in a wrinkled jacket. He was sitting on the sidewalk with his back up against the brick wall of the coffee shop. He didn't see me, and I knew I could just keep going, but that nagging little voice popped into my head, the same one that hung that sign on the wall of my office. It said, "No act of kindness is ever wasted." So I stopped and I reached in my pocket and I pulled out this crumpled up $10 bill I'd found in there this morning. I tucked it into his clutched fist and waved, and I kept going. I get to the ATM, the next stop on my list. I'm wondering, is the post office going to close before I can get there? I'm punching the buttons, and that little voice in my head whispers again, "Get more and go take it back to him." So I walked back to the man. I leaned down. I said, "Sir, here's a little bit more." He looked confused. He said, "Why'd you come back?" I said, "Well, sir, I believe God gives us all divine appointments to step into a stranger's life and remind them that they are loved." his face crumpled up, and he told me about the life he used to have and how his wife had died in a fire and he couldn't save her and how he just couldn't find his way back. I can relate, I said. I once had a life-changing event too. And I had a hard time finding my way back again. But maybe someone up there wants you to know that if you're still here, you're not done yet. You still got some living to do. Thank you, he whispered. And I walked away. And I remembered that day, I do still have purpose. And if I'm still here, then I'm not done yet either. That was the last time I saw that man propped up against the wall of the coffee shop. Maybe he moved to another street, or I don't know. I like to think that he found his way back. And now today I'm standing in front of you in another divine appointment. No, I don't have a crumpled up $10 bill in my pocket to give you, but I'm hoping my message will be enough to let you know that you are seen, that you matter, and that you do have purpose, even if you can't feel it. And all the big things we do as leaders, let's not forget the small moments where we can make somebody feel seen. Oh, and don't worry about how to know when you found one. That little voice will tell you. And you never know when that gift will come right back at you. Because no small act of kindness is ever wasted.
I love it.
And now, AV team, would you please play showcase video number 2 from Ernie Harker.
How many of you had a childhood hero you looked up to as a kid? Raise your hands. Okay, mine was Chuck Norris. He was always the underdog. He was always outnumbered in his movies, but after a flurry of fists and feet, he always came out on top. And I think one of the reasons I liked him so much is that I felt like I was an underdog. I grew up in southeast Idaho. I know, celebrities come from there. Southeast Idaho. I was in a special reading class, which means I wasn't a good reader. I was really scrawny for my age, and I was the middle of 9 boys. Yeah. So, Chuck Norris, Ernie Harker. So you can imagine my surprise when years later I find myself in a beautiful home theater, in a leather luxury recliner, watching a Chuck Norris movie within hand-holding distance of Chuck Norris. What? That was awesome, right? That's not the end of my story, but great experiences like this can always be traced back to a single decision. The decision to silence the dream killer. Yeah, you know the dream killer. He sounds like this in my head. Ernie, you want to start eating right, please? You couldn't say no to a Cheeto or a Dorito or an Oreo or anything that ends with O. You want to charge how much for a speaking appointment? Who do you think you are, Clint Pulver? But here's why this is important. The best version of ourselves stands on the other side of uncertainty. It requires us to risk failure. And the dream killer always stands at the crossroads. The key is learning how to silence the dream killer. After about 25 years in the advertising and marketing business, I decided it was time for me to write a book. That was the hardest thing I have ever done. Right? You've read a book. If anybody's written a book, it's brutal. There should be an award given to authors with ADD because I could not start a sentence. without thinking of a dozen ways to finish it. So after hundreds, I'm not kidding, hundreds of hours, herding word cats, my book finally started coming together. And I thought, now's the time for me to do a little bit of book cover design research. I want my brand to pop, right? There are so many books on branding. The more I saw, the more discouraged I got. And then you got it, The Dream Killer. Ernie, does the world really need another book on branding? Seriously, no one's going to buy it or read it. Give it up. Besides, everything else you've done has been a complete failure. What makes you think this will be any different? Boom. This time, I believe The Dream Killer was right. I'd been thinking about a lot of my failures, and man, that hit. It started I was depressed. I was getting pressure on my soul from these failures, like a warm can of generic root beer being shaken. And I was gonna blow. But one of my buddies saw me, and he said, Ernie, what is wrong? I wasn't my usual self. I projectile vomited my failures all over him. The business I started in 1995 failed. The television series I produced, the animated series, the How to Draw book, the children's book, fail. Everyone around me has got the Midas touch but me. Everybody's got success except me. There's a story about an ancient prophet who forges glass stones, and he brings them to the top of a mountain and asks God to touch them to give them light. I felt like I was one of those glass stones begging God to pick me. And he's like, nah. How about Billy Bass, the singing fish on the wall? Bing! And I'm going, Lord, pick me, please. How about the Kardashians? Bing! How about the Thigh Master? Bing! Are you serious? I was convinced even God didn't want me to succeed. I was a mess. I gave up writing my book. It was just, and my buddy put his arm around me, and he said, Ernie, you get credit for trying. But in a strange way, what I understood is that trying is success. Success isn't the outcome of our trying. See, outcomes are super important, I get it. But if we measure success only based on outcomes, most of our lives we lived in an unsuccessful state. That sounds terrible. That's the life I was living. But if success is defined by the effort, we could spell success with 3 C's instead of 2. Create a plan. Crush the plan. Celebrate crushing of the plan. That is success. If we don't get the desired outcome, no worries. Create a new plan. Crush the new plan. Celebrate, revise, repeat. This new definition of success opened my eyes. It reframed how I thought about things. I finished my book. It took the teeth out of the dream killer. I wasn't afraid to fail anymore because I was doing success every day. Now, it works for everything, by the way. I was leading a brainstorm session for a convenience store chain. We needed to come up with the coolest, biggest, baddest sweepstakes prize ever. It needed to be so cool that 18 to 45-year-old men who work out of a truck, landscapers, contractors, plumbers, it would have to get them so excited, they would join the loyalty program and then spend all their rewards on entries to win. It had to be awesome. One person said, how about a year's supply of beer? I'm like, that's good. And then somebody else, how about $100,000? I'm like, well, maybe. Then someone else said, how about we give them the ultimate work truck built by the Diesel brothers? We'll call it Truck Norris. Oh my gosh, we love this idea, especially me. Then the voice of the dream killer. Ernie, you're gonna get sued. Chuck Norris is unreachable. He'll never want to work with a convenience store chain. But with my new definition of what success wasn't getting Chuck Norris to to do it with us. Success was asking Chuck to do it. So we created a plan. The first part of that plan was to get a hold of Chuck Norris's agent. Okay, a lot of people think they're Chuck Norris's agent. They're not. So after literally months of dead ends and round turns, we finally reached Chuck Norris's agent. We pitched him, and the agent said, no. Ernie, I tried to warn you, but you wouldn't listen. But at least I tried, right? Right. Because a few weeks later, I get a call from Gina Norris, Chuck Norris's wife. She wants to know more about the Chuck Norris campaign. My hands started sweating. My mouth got as dry as it is now. And I choked out the worst pitch of my career. Gina said, we're in on one condition. And I'm like, condition? Carlos and I discovered, by the way, Carlos is Chuck Norris's real name. Carlos and I discovered water, pure source of water on our ranch in Navasota, Texas. We decided to bottle it and sell it so we can raise money for our Kickstart Kids charity. If you agree to be the first retailer to sell our water, we'll give you permission to use the word Truck Norris and give you access to Chuck Norris for your promotional materials. Done! We're in. A few months later, I'm in Navasota, Texas with this awesome Truck Norris. And I'm directing Chuck Norris, the kid from Idaho. We have so much fun. He invites me to work out with him in his home gym. Then he says, let's have dinner in my house. I'm right here. Chuck's right here. He says, Ernie, what do you want to do now? I said, Carlos? With anime eyes twinkling full of hero worship, can we watch a Chuck Norris movie together? Let's do it. A few moments later, I'm sitting in a theater in a leather luxury recliner with a big piece of apple pie on my lap, almost holding hands with Chuck Norris. Great things can happen when we silence the dream killer and spell success with 3 C's. Create. Oh yeah, time. Create. Crush. Thank you. Celebrate. Success is inevitable. 2 seconds left.
Please welcome to the stage award-winning storyteller who will now get the applause he deserves, Ernie Harker. It's like looking in a mirror. Well done, my friend, well done. So many things we could point out, voice and vocal variety and character and dialogue, so many things. And I want to go deeper to the less sexy, more practical layers of a story and point out what, beyond even all those, really makes that story work. The first thing that I loved about your story, Ernie, well, not first, but one of them is, first of all, the energy. The energy, what an elusive thing. We can't really define it. We can't teach it. We don't know exactly what it is, but we know it when we see it, and we know it when we don't. Well done. And how do we do that on our story? I mean, have you always been like that up on stage? Is that just the thing that's always been natural for you?
Pretty much.
Good for you, I mean.
That's kind of a loaded question, because I could ask you, have you always been fabulous?
Oh, well, yeah. You're right. Touche. So how do we take that and translate it to a story? First of all, being fully present inside the story is a start. Seeing it for me and relaying it to me instead of standing on the side of it and reciting it to me in the same safe space and distance that you might your other content. Step inside it. Look around and show me. Go there. Another way is to write that energy into the script. So it's the best way that I can say it, is you can give your words that element of passion for what you do. And energy does not always equal movement. It doesn't mean necessarily pacing or pitch. It's more than that, though they factor into it. Another thing I loved, Ernie, is the humor. Hands down. You're funny, dude. Funny, funny, funny. And I'm so envious because you're funny in this natural, it feels like an outpouring of you, not like, oh, I went to somebody and I got them to write 10 jokes and I plugged them in. It felt like, I mean, have you always known how to do that? Did you work on it? What's the deal there on the humor?
I learned that from my twin brother.
Okay.
We make each other laugh all the time. We try to outdo each other.
Yeah. Maybe, too, you have that mindset that when you get up there, you're not afraid to be Ernie on that stage and play full out according to your personality.
Well, Ernie's a nerd name, so it's like nobody has high expectations.
Aww. Well, hey, that's great, because then you can always get, it's only up from there. So how do we do that with our stories? Humor, it's so hard. We all want it. We can't find it. How do you find the funny? How do you find the funny? You don't look for it. You look for the fun. Look for the fun, look for the silly, look for the extensions of your own personality that already exist and play them up. I loved Ernie's technique. I'm giving it a name. It probably already has a name. The inner narrative. You want to make a story funny? Just tell us what you're thinking in your head. Well, within reason, clean it up a little bit, but just you can give us this whole long-running narrative and add as many jokes as you want, and you don't even have to change the story. Ernie, I loved that it had a conflict. I saw your conflict in the story. Little Ernie Harker feeling less than. It was clear to me. I understood it. When you write your story, make sure you understand what the conflict is in that character and that you relay it clearly. So I looked at your story and I thought, okay, how do I play with that? That's with both of them. What in the world could I do? I also like that you had action steps. I'm sure y'all noticed that. He had clear talking points inside the story. He didn't need to tell it and then come over here and tell you the points. The story did all the work, self-contained. Loved that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Teach me.
Well, and I'm not looking to make a story better. I'm looking at other things we can do with a tool. It's not about, what layers could we add? What else could we do with such a good story? Well, I thought to myself, could we seed for more business within that story? Give a subtle plug without giving a bold plug. Could we ratchet it up the drama even more? Could we perhaps, and I can't quite put the words to it, could we perhaps make it even more digestible and repeatable? And could we do it in half the time? Let's see. And AV team, why don't we have a little bit more music?
Oh, I like this.
So the year was 2018, and I'm sitting in a leather recliner in a home movie theater, a foot away from my childhood hero, so close I could smell his aftershave. The man, the myth, the legend, black belt, Texas Ranger, 6-time karate champion, lone wolf McQuaid, none other than the Chuck Norris. That's right, me, little Ernie Harker, middle of 9 boys from nowhere, Idaho, king of last place, scrawny, forgettable, voted most likely to be, well, not even included in the most likely list. But not this time. No, this time little Ernie Harker has won this race. How? Chuck Norris style. By taking out the competition. The story really starts a few years before that leather recliner moment. I had been in advertising and marketing for 25 years when I decided to write A book. That's right, me, the kid who grew up in special classes for slow learners. But as soon as I tell this guy at work that I'm going to write a book, he laughs. And he gets this look like, who do you think you are? Kelly Swanson? Ever had that creep in your life who likes to point out everything that's wrong with you? Yeah, me too. Total creep. That's why I call him the creeper. But he got to me, y'all. I was too scared to keep going, and I gave up on the book, and then I beat myself up for giving up. And then suddenly, all my failures are spinning in front of me like some kind of funhouse carousel. I finally shared with a friend how discouraged I was, and he said the words I will never forget. He said, Ernie, outcomes don't define our worth. It's the tries that count. You're stronger than that. Oh, creep, don't let him win. The best version of yourself stands on the other side of uncertainty and that risk of failure. And there will always be a creeper standing in the crossroads. But you can beat him. His words changed my life, and I saw everything through a new lens, and I stopped focusing on measuring outcomes, and I started measuring implementation. That part I could control. Creating a plan, crushing a plan, celebrating the plan. And I began to measure my tries, not my finish lines. And before I knew it, I had finished my book. The creeper lost, and I got the final say. Now that creeper, y'all, he's swift, he's strong, and he knows just where to strike. The creeper was my inner voice. The one who points out what I'm not, but he isn't as strong as he used to be, because I've been working out. The moment I shifted my focus, my business began to grow. Until not even a year later, I am leading this big marketing brainstorming session for a client. It's a convenience store chain, and we wanted to come up with the coolest sweepstakes prize ever, that we wanted to attract men who work out of a truck. And we were going to give away a truck built by the Diesel brothers, and we would call it, wait for it, Truck Norris. And wouldn't it be cool if we could get Chuck Norris to be part of the campaign? Oh, that creeper came on strong. He was at that meeting. He said, what if we're sued? He's unreachable. He'll never go for it. Stop. Success isn't getting, success is asking. We created a plan, we laser focused on that plan, and after months of dead ends, one day we finally get a phone call from his wife. She listened to my pitch, and there was a long pause, and then she said, yes. We didn't get the account because we were the best. Or not just that anyway. We got it because we didn't let fear stop us. We took our eyes off of outcomes and we focused on the plan. And it was during the photo shoot that Chuck invited me over to his house for a meal. And after dinner he said, Ernie, what would you like to do? So that is how I ended up sitting in that leather recliner next to my hero, watching a Chuck Norris movie together, because I had made a choice to risk failure. And that's why I created a blueprint called the Finish Line Strategy that has helped hundreds of teams like yours create a plan, crush a plan, and celebrate your plan. I took out my creeper, and so can you. Don't leave your dreams to chance. Take out your biggest competitor. The best version of yourself stands on the other side of uncertainty. I'm Ernie Harker, helping you cross that finish line by starting strong, so you get the final say.
I'm not worthy. Wow.
That's a lot of chopping. If you do just one thing you learned today, I pointed out 8 layers. There are 8 more in that book online. If you do just one thing, look at all the different things you can achieve with your story. It's not about finding the better story. It's not about the best story. It's about finding the right story that does what you need it to do and understanding how you're going to use that tool. And is it compelling? And is it persuasive? And is it easily digestible and repeatable? There's a free gift card on some of the tables. If you find it, go to the registration desk and you will get a prize. We're going to do part 2 in the breakout session immediately following. Please don't stop me so I can get there first. Where we will pull some of you up from the stage and do some more story makeovers in real time. But to end, I want to bring Jody back up here and Ernie back up here, and we want to thank them for being willing to share this game day film and for being willing to let it be shown on video. We are honored. Our 2 award-winning storytellers, Jody Brown and Ernie Harker. This has been another episode of Stories Unplugged, where we go deep into story to see not just what makes them good, but what makes them work, where the art of story meets the business of persuasion. Thanks for watching.
This stage continues to show the best of NSA one more time. What an amazing session we just had. One more time.